I have a friend who is at the moment working as a professor of animation in America, and he has students that come from America itself, but also quite a few international students. One of his students, who were studying under him from another country, brought to him a concept for a story for their short film, which was part of an assignment, in which the main character was a girl trapped in a bubble. And at the end of the story, in order for her to be freed, it took the entire village to come together and all press against the bubble at the same time in order for it to pop and for her to be free. My friend told her that this is one of the most un-American styles of story he had seen. And when she asked why, he explained to her that if this was an American story, what would happen is all the people in town would laugh and ridicule the girl in the bubble. She would break the bubble under her own powers without any assistance from them, and at the end of the story would be made the leader of the village. In order to kickstart the 5th generation of My Little Pony toys, Hasbro has recently released a Netflix movie for the new characters that they are hoping to introduce, and they have said that they're going to follow this up with a TV show afterwards. Now, if you want to know what my biases are going into this regarding My Little Pony, I have been collecting the Gen 1 toys since I was about, I think, 9 or 10. And then when Gen 2 happened, I was very unhappy because they were so different from Gen 1, and I did not like that because, it's different. And when Gen 3 happened, I don't really collect any of the other gens. I did think Gen 3 was a bit of a return to form in the design of the toys because they were once again leaning more into looking like actual horses. Not completely. Hasbro had a range of toys in the 80s called Dream Beauties, where the pony toys looked like literal horses, but it was that perfect balance of looking slightly realistic, quote unquote, to real horses, but it still had a cartoony bend to it. Then Gen 4 came along, and at first I was really against the character design, especially for the toys, and I'm still not the biggest fan of the toy designs. And at first I was very against the cartoon when I watched the premiere. However, I stuck with it and I ended up really liking it, and I really got into the show around season 3 when Discord was introduced as a villain in season 2 and then reformed as a member of the cast in season 3. And that's kind of where my interests really were piqued. And Discord is one of my favorite characters in cartoons, just in general, not just for My Little Pony, just because I think he's so interesting. I own this, and I own quite a few other Discord toys. However, around season 4, I fell off watching the show because the television show started really focusing on pandering to meme culture online and using in-jokes and pop culture references and all these other things in a show which was primarily about pastel-colored horses in a fantasy setting. And as it leaned more and more into that, I just lost interest because it's not that I don't enjoy that kind of thing, it's just that it felt like an intrusion as to why I was watching the show. And on top of this, I was becoming very uncomfortable in the fan base. And it's not like one of those things where it's because of the bronies, it's not really that, but at the same time, it was because of that. But as somebody who's been collecting the Gen 1 toys since I was, if we're being honest, 3, I felt that, as with every generation of My Little Pony, I wanted to look into the new generation and see where it was going. So if you want to know what my stance is, because with this generation more than any other generation, you kind of have to put your cards on the table if you're going to do a video on it, to be like, hey, this is where I stand on the whole Gen 4 My Little Pony thing. And I sat down and I watched the movie, and I thought I would make a first impressions video, and I would have to do it quick because this is one of those movies where I watched it yesterday and most of it has already left my brain. But I took notes, so we're just going to go through my notes and discuss the film. One thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go into this film and compare it to Gen 4 in terms of, I guess, world building is the best way to put it. I'm not going to sit here and nitpick or even compare it to Gen 4 and be like, well, this doesn't make sense because in Gen 4, episode 12 of season 8, X, Y, and Z happened, and so for this to have happened in the film, it goes completely against what the lore had set up. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit here and discuss the socio-political ramifications of the power imbalance between Earth ponies, unicorns, and Pegasi in a movie that's aimed at 4 to 7 year olds. And I feel like that's a level of pedantic that borderlines on, I'm trying to think of like a comparison, but I actually really can't. I've been trying since yesterday to think of a comparison for this specific line in this video, and I cannot think of a comparison for that level of pedanticness. See, this is also why I kind of fell out of the fan base for Gen 4, because of the pedantic wiki article approach that a lot of fans, what often felt like the majority of fans, approached the show with. There was a complete disregard for characters and writing, and it was all about writing wiki articles and how the lore fits together and the world building. I once heard another YouTuber describe it as what a large part of the Gen 4 fan base wanted was a sandbox in which they could play around in. They didn't want something with characters and story. And again, that's kind of what drove me away from Gen 4. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you about this movie in terms of like how it adds or subtracts from the established lore of the cartoon that preceded it. If I'm honest, it's a little stupid. I'm sorry. It's just, it's not the franchise for it. You know, I'm somebody where I read every single codex entry in the Mass Effect trilogy, including the ones that did not have narration, where you had to physically read the screen. I did that. I've read all of them. I have so much useless Mass Effect knowledge in my head. But to bring it into My Little Pony, it's not going to improve the writing or characters in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think it's been handled that way. I don't even think Gen 4 handled that way until like the very last seasons, which again, I think they were trying to fall in step with what the largest part of the fan base wanted. And I don't think this franchise was ever made for that. I don't think that's the right approach to have here with this film. So we're not. So we start off in the film with some 2D footage of the original Gen 4 cast, and they're all there. And the one thing I wrote was that the 2D, it looks good in the film, and I do understand this is done with a movie budget, not with a TV show budget, but I did feel the style of the 2D animation here is pretty good. One thing I was saying even before I started doing this video is that the 3D designs of the ponies in this movie, they make me think of Rapunzel a lot. I know people have been calling them like they've all got the Elsa face, and they do, but I kept thinking Rapunzel. I kept thinking about that over and over again. And in this 2D section, it, by extension, made me think of the Rapunzel TV show's art style. But I did say, if this is what the TV show for Gen 5 is going to look like, I do feel better because, quite frankly, I don't know if you've seen the clip art for the Gen 5 merchandise when they're not using the 3D renders. The clip art is terrible. It's really bad. I'm convinced that the person who did the clip art was using 3D models of ponies, and I'm talking about like the Skyrim mod kind of 3D art, and then had them in specific poses and then traced over them, because that's what it looks like to me. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I've used 3D models for reference as well. I'm saying that in that I think that is literally what the artist for the clip art has done. So I was kind of dreading to think what the TV show for Gen 5 is going to look like. However, if they're going to use this style of 2D animation for the TV show, then I think it's going to be much better than I anticipated. I do wish that they had nostrils though. And okay, I'm just going to get this out of the way. Junko Mizuno wrote a manga in the early 2000s called Pure Trance, and it has a bunch of flavored text like in between the actual story. There's like little things in the panels that describes things about the world building. And they have this one specific piece of flavor text right at the beginning of the manga for these things called Machan baby bears. And the flavor text says, best-selling stuffed animals that come in great variety of colors and shapes. While they attract the crazed collectors who have never even seen a real bear, the designer keeps working on new ones without knowing what a real bear looks like either. That's what I keep thinking. Why? Please, can we go back to horses looking like horses? I'm really not into this growing trend, and it's not just My Little Pony, it's across the board. Anime has this problem too. I am against the chihuahuification of character design that's happening across all of media at the moment, especially girls media, but just in media in general, you know. It's not cute. Your waifu can't breathe. But and that's what I looked at here. Also, it's part of the movie. It's almost got kind of a parody feeling to it, like they're parodying Gen 4, which a little mean, but okay, whatever. It feels a little bit disingenuous. You know what it makes me think of? It made me think of that clip that people would always put on Twitter and stuff like that of Korra when she's like 4 years old and she runs into the hut screaming, "I'm the Avatar and you've got to deal with it." That's what this part of the movie made me think of immediately. And after this, we learn that the pony races have been split up along, I guess, breed race. So you've got the Earth ponies, you've got the unicorns, so you've got the Pegasus, and they all hate each other. And I wrote in my notes, why? With like several whys. I don't like it when My Little Pony does a segregation approach to its world building. They kind of did this in Gen 3 as well. Well, it's not they didn't. They exactly did this in Gen 3. However, in Gen 3 it was like, oh, there's like the mythical unicorn island or something, and I think there was just like one Pegasus. I don't know. I wasn't really into Gen 3 again because I wasn't collecting the toys and I wasn't interested in the show. But like Gen 3 did this as well, and I always found it like limits your world building more than it supports it. It takes away more than it adds. And I don't know, I'm really not into segregation along racial lines being a world building factor in My Little Pony. And I'm being a little facetious, but I genuinely, I don't know, I just feel like it gives you less than what you can work with than it grants you. It kind of traps you into, this is the story you're going to tell if you make this your setting for your world, and then you have to follow those steps. And I wrote in my notes, I'm also like, is this commentary? But this is the one thing I'll give this movie. It does not really try to be woke. It does not try to comment on social issues. It does not try and queerbait. Although I would have preferred if we have some indication that not all the characters are, you know, cis, but it might come later. I don't know. My point is, it is not clamoring for brownie points by paying a lot of lip service to social issues without delving into any of those issues with any kind of depth. And I do appreciate that. I've been listening to Mauler's Every Frame a Pause podcast where they're watching Batwoman.
Look, I don't know where you got this idea that all crows are bastards, but some of us are trying to make a difference.
Well, in my experience, when the crows fly together, they call it a murder for a reason.
Oh my god.
We did everything we know about.
So I will give this movie that at no point does it bring up social issues it doesn't have the skills to talk about. So I did write here, is this commentary when it is the segregation part of the storyline? I don't think it is, or if it is, it's at least to a level where it doesn't completely eclipse the entire movie. It just is a thing. I did feel the one comment that made me uncomfortable is one of the cults, after playing with Sunny, run out of her house and say, when she says, oh, unicorns and Pegasi and Earth ponies all used to be friends, the one cult is like, that's not what my teacher taught us in school. And that kind of made me uncomfortable. And I think because people are going to comment and they're going to be like, oh, well, you know that happens in the real world. Yeah, no shit, it happens in the real world. That's why it made me uncomfortable. I'm listening to one pastel-colored horse talk to another pastel-colored horse about revisionist history in the classroom. I also wrote that at this point the brony pandering was really obnoxious. However, I don't think that's entirely fair. It was just having the opposite effect on me than it was intended, where I think it was put there so that massive fans of Gen 4 could go, oh, they're referencing X, Y, and Z, I can write a wiki article about it, where me, it just kind of made me cringe because it was bringing up memories of the fan base, which I did not enjoy. However, I actually think this is a bit unfair on my part, because more than any other gen of My Little Pony, this one kind of has the albatross around its neck that is Gen 4, which I think is the second most successful generation My Little Pony has had after the first one, and it has decided to directly tie itself to Gen 4 by having characters directly reference characters from Gen 4 and have the, I guess, iconography repeatedly brought up throughout this movie. So it has opened itself up to comparisons to Gen 4, where otherwise I would not have bothered to compare it to Gen 4, because in the past every generation of My Little Pony has been completely removed from the previous one. They have nothing to do with each other. Kind of like Final Fantasy, each Final Fantasy is its own thing. There might be a crossover here and there, like the character of Sid, but you don't play Final Fantasy 9 and complain because it's completely different from Final Fantasy 10. But here, Gen 5 has resurrected the ghost of My Little Pony past with Gen 4, and in doing so, it has opened itself up to direct comparison. And the one comparison lots of people are making, and I think it's a very valid complaint, is, oh well, you know, Twilight Sparkle she worked her entire immortal life to bring together the ponies and teach them about friendship, and it's like, nope, we got rid of that. So, well done. In opening yourself up for direct comparison, you have made yourself worse as a result. I also wrote that I've seen a lot of people compare the 3D ponies to the toy line, the Philly toys, if you know what I'm talking about. I'll put up an image of what they look like. And I don't think this is fair, because people are comparing them to the 3D movie, TV show, whatever it is, called Philly Fantasia. I don't think that's entirely fair, just because they're both 3D, but I will say one thing that is making me think of the Philly toys is all of the little Philly toys are flocked. They've got a fuzzy texture to them, and you can just see from the screenshots, the ponies in this movie also have that kind of texture to them due to the lighting and the texture of the models. And that is putting the idea of the Philly toys in my head more than anything else. So I think that might be like subconsciously why people say, oh, they look like the Philly toys, is because of that more than the movie itself. Also, I hate the names in this movie. I really do. Okay, so here's the thing. In My Little Pony, they've always had names that you would think My Little Pony toys would have. I always felt Gen 3 went a little far with its naming conventions. I remember before Gen 4 came out, I always felt Gen 3 had the kind of stereotypical names you would think My Little Pony toys would have, whereas their names aren't that stereotypical for girls' toys in Gen 1 and Gen 2. In Gen 1, you had names like Glory, Galaxy, Milky Way, Starhopper, who is objectively the best pony out of all of them. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. And you had ponies like Posy and Wildflower, names that were very basic. However, they communicated exactly what they needed to. There was a pony called Mimic, and she was designed after a parrot. There was a pony called Night Glider, who is also the pony with the best objective design. I like the space-themed ones. And then in Gen 3, you had names like Strawberry Reef, which I still don't really understand what that's supposed to mean. And you had toys and characters like Daffy-Daisy, Peachy Pie, Sparkleworks, Sunny Days, Thistle Whistle. You know, like names that were very much more what you would imagine if you were to think about pastel-colored unicorn toys. And it seems like they've gone the complete opposite direction with G5, because now the characters have names like Izzy, Zip, Hitch, Sunny. It's like, I hate the names. I really hate the names. Sunny Star Scout is probably the best name out of all of them, but even then they refer to her as Sunny, and I'm just, these are not good names. And the thing is, even when there are names that you would think about My Little Pony, like they will refer to background characters, it seems to be done in a way to almost mock those kinds of names, it's not done with any kind of sincerity to it. It's only done to make fun of that kind of name. Maybe it's just because I'm a little sensitive to that kind of thing, so because I was analyzing this to like be critical about it. But it did come across to me like all the real characters have very boring names which aren't indicative of anything, and then all the background characters, when they are named by the named like the main characters, they are given names that are supposed to be funny, and they're just names that you would think ponies would have in My Little Pony, but they're said in like a tone of voice to indicate that the name is silly. And I bring this up because one of our main characters in the movies has a mom, and her name is the very My Little Pony style name of Phyllis. So that's where we're at with the naming conventions for this toy line. That's fun. I wrote here, Sunny's dad talks to her. He's the one who's putting these ideas into her head that all ponies should be friends. And I just wrote down, Sunny's dad's sonnetu medallion. And I also wrote down, she and her dad have this moment where they're running around and laughing and ha ha ha, oh, they're such good friends, this father and daughter team. And I wrote down in my notes, is the dad gonna die? And then 20 seconds later, when we see Sunny as a grown-up, we pan over to his glasses on the table and I'm like, oh, her dad died. So that happens in the film. I did want to say this movie's animation is really good in terms of the animation itself. On a technical level, the animation is really good. However, I found the facial animation to be quite off-putting, and I remember looking at the timestamp, and I think it was about an hour into the movie, and I was still feeling rather creeped out by the facial animation. And what I think it is partly it's character design, but I think it's also partly because this movie is done in 3D. And the reason for that is because by putting it in 3D instead of having it be a 2D movie, it just looks slightly more realistic, which means it pushes it further into the uncanny valley. And I don't think these designs work in 3D, which is why I say I think when the 2D TV show comes out, it'll probably look a little bit better, but that's why everybody's saying they have like Elsa face and that. And why people haven't really been into the design, it's because of this uncanny valley effect that is this character design in a 3D space. And I also know that it's not entirely the character design's fault, because the character designer is an artist called Imalu. When you look at Imalu's art when they were part of the Brony fandom, they know how to draw ponies looking very attractive, like aesthetically pleasing. So I know Imalu would have had very good designs for these characters. I just don't think those designs translate into 3D very well, because when the character moves, it's a little off-putting because the animation is really well done, but it's a little bit too realistic for these characters with the Machan baby bear design philosophy, with a realistic lighting system and then the fuzzy texture on the characters themselves. It's a whole lot of too much put together that isn't really compatible with each other. I also wrote down that, and this is something I had a problem with way before the movie came out, I hate the tech in this movie. I hate that there is technology in this movie, and I talked about this in another video where I was really into Gen 1 of My Little Pony, the TV show, when they lived in a magical castle in a magical valley with rainbows and dragons and shapeshifters and monsters and witches. And then still in Gen 1 they switched over to the My Little Pony Tales TV show, where it was a bunch of high schoolers that like have houses and teenage problems, and at that point why bother making them ponies? And this is kind of what I felt with this as well. I hate that there's technology. I hate that they have cell phones. I hate that she has a digital alarm clock. I do not like it because, again, at that point, why bother making it ponies? Like, what is the point? Why not have it be like Monster High? Why not have it be Winx Club? Why not have it be anything else than ponies? Like, what's the point? And the only reason for doing it this way that I can think of is pure laziness, like a lack of imagination to put together a kind of world building that would support the characters in a way that would make them interesting. No, because if you have technology, you can make topical jokes, you can make pop culture references, you can be hey there fellow kids about the whole thing, and and it just speaks of a lack of imagination, like I said. Another thing, I never want to hear a pastel-colored horse use the word automated in a magical horse cartoon ever again. I also wrote down, G4 did this too, but not to this extent. But why is the larger pony population literally awful? Like the crowd, like the people who are not the main characters, just the general population of the towns that they are in. We start off in a place, I forget what it's called. I think it's Maritime Bay, something like that. I kept calling it Baltimore in my head. I cannot tell you why. I have no reason for that. But I think I called it in my head Baltimore once, and my brain just decided that that's the name of the town. But the fact of the population being like really awful, it's not just Baltimore, because that's like a plot point of they all hate unicorns and Pegasi. But it's like every single place they go to, the population as a whole, they're just awful people. Like, they're really terrible. And they're portrayed as stupid, easily cowed, eager to conform and follow leadership dictation, and not having any personal thoughts of their own, and not being able to make decisions on their own, to just follow, to fall in step with what the person in charge says. And they're all portrayed as stupid and panicky and just hateful, and it really makes for an atmosphere of negativity. It really puts you in a bad mood, because everybody is an asshole. Like, absolutely everyone. Our main characters not so much, because they are our main characters, but it just gives this feeling that the larger population are stupid assholes. And it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel like this is an environment that you want to spend time in, to watch the show, to play with these characters, to play with the toys, to watch the TV show. This is not a world that you want to escape into for half an hour or an hour, or I think this movie was 90 minutes. You don't feel you want to be transported into this environment, because it's just unpleasant. Everybody is so unpleasant, and I don't know why they've written it this way. Gen 4 had this a little bit, but not to the degree that this entire movie has, because this movie kind of needs the larger population to be stupid assholes for the main plot of racism to exist. Like, for the segregation to make sense in the plot, everybody kind of has to be a panicky asshole. And it feels bad, man. There's a part in this after Sunny completely ruins the weird TED Talk fashion show Apple product presentation thing. And I wrote down, first of all, why isn't she in jail? But there's also a part where her one and only childhood friend Hitch tells her, I'm the only friend you have left, and you don't want to lose me too, do you? And I wrote down, what emotional abuse shit is this? How could you... Don't ever say that to somebody. Don't ever tell somebody. Don't use your friendship with them as a bargaining chip for why they should improve their behavior. Do not do this. And don't write this into your cartoon and have it be presented as something that we as the audience should take seriously, because this is awful. Like I said, and it doesn't help that the larger population being assholes, now our main characters are being assholes to each other as well, and not in a being mean to each other way, but like in that very insidious way. It's a bad feeling. Don't do this, not to characters we're supposed to like. And Hitch is never called out as to this being something bad to have said to a friend. This is never presented as him having done anything wrong or saying something hurtful. This is just something he says, and it's presented as something that is fact. And that's terrible. I also hate the self-aware dialogue, but this is a bigger problem and it should probably be its own video at some point. Just the self-aware dialogue, the nudge nudge, wink wink, know what I mean kind of dialogue. It's tiring. I don't know why we can't just have characters be sincere. I watched Arlo the Alligator Boy a while back. That movie's very good, by the way. I highly recommend that film. Sit down and watch the Arlo the Alligator Boy movie.
Follow, 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 follow me home. If it don't, it'll be alright. I'll be gone in the morning light.
That movie and TV show that it's going to become, none of the characters speak with that kind of self-aware, ironic style of dialogue. And it works, and it's fun to watch, and people really enjoyed the movie, those who watched it. So, I'm so tired of the ironic in on the joke, dripping with insincerity dialogue. And I know why they write it like this. They write it like this because they say that children these days are too savvy because they're all on the internet, so we have to write it that way. But to me, that just speaks of insecurity, because in my experience, kids and teenagers will respond to sincerity. Maybe not teenagers so much, but people who are watching a cartoon already are probably there because they want to watch the cartoon. Like, they are there to sincerely watch the cartoon, unless they're doing what I'm doing, which is to complain about it. So if you present your dialogue with sincerity, people are not going to find it a problem unless they walked into the movie to find it a problem. So I hate this way of writing. I once, when I was in college a few years ago, heard it described as the writing is written in a way where every single line of dialogue was written with the thought in mind that somebody will tweet it as like a quote. Interestingly, that was said when the Rapunzel movie came out. So Izzy Moonbeam, who they just call Izzy because that's a cool name for a unicorn. Sorry, I can't get over the names. Izzy shows up and she's like, "Hi, new friends." And Sunny is like, "Oh no, a unicorn, I have to get you out of here." And then they leave the town, and it turns out Izzy doesn't have magic, and Sunny decides, "Oh, we need to fix that." And then they go on their adventure, and then we have our plot. And I wrote down, why is Izzy here? Like, I know why Izzy is here. She's here because Sunny set off that note when she was a child that says you have friends in Baltimore, and Izzy obviously found it, and now she's come to Baltimore. But this is not stated in the movie. Izzy shows up, Sunny goes, "Oh no, a unicorn, I have to save you from the asshole population of my town. What, you don't have magic? Let's go fix that." And it never crosses her mind to even wonder why a unicorn showed up in the first place. This never crosses her mind. She does not ask, nothing. And this is the first instance of the way this movie was written. I've written it a little bit later in my notes, but I have the impression that this movie was written backwards. And I'll get to that when I've actually written the note, but this is the very first instance of that, where this movie is written backwards, where the plot needs Izzy and Sunny to go on an adventure together, and for that to happen, they need a reason to do so, which is Izzy doesn't have magic, and that's a problem, and so Sunny and Izzy go off to help solve that problem. But at no point does this happen because of personal character motivation. It happens because that is what the plot says needs to happen. So off they go, and Hitch follows them because Hitch, he wants to, I think he wants to arrest Sunny for being friends with the unicorn. He wants to capture Izzy because Earth ponies hate unicorns, and he doesn't like that there's a unicorn in his town, and then he runs off to Sunny, who's trying to hide Izzy. And then he chases them out of the town to arrest Sunny for having a unicorn in the town. Again, see, this is what I mean. I guess I'm gonna have to talk about it now because this is gonna keep happening. Hitch runs after Sunny and Izzy because the plot needs Hitch to follow Izzy and Sunny. It makes no logical sense for him to do so based on what his character motivation is, which is to arrest Sunny or get the unicorn out of Baltimore. But the plot needs him to follow them so that he can be part of the friend group, and so he follows them. There is no personal reason for him to do so. He does so because we need that to happen or we don't have a story. I wrote down, we're at the Pegasi and we still don't know why Izzy went to the Earth ponies. This is about 40 minutes into the movie. We still have had not any explanation for what Izzy's personal character motivations are. Sunny's motivations is that she thinks all the ponies should be friends, and she's just stoked to have a unicorn here, and she feels that they should bring magic back. Sunny's personal motivations for why the plot is happening, I can at least understand, even though... No, I guess they are personally motivated because her entire life, thanks to her dad, have rotated around rewriting how people think about the friendship between the ponies. So she has personal motivations in this. Izzy doesn't. Izzy is just here. Hitch doesn't, because his motivations make no sense, because his motivations is he wants to arrest Sunny for having a unicorn in the town, even though they're no longer in the town. So the only character with any kind of personal motivations as to why the story is happening at this point is Sunny. They run into Zip at this point, and Zip, we get the impression, we find out later Zip is actually the princess of the Pegasi. She and Pip, who I guess they're supposed to be twins if they're called like Zip and Pip. Her real name is Zephyr, which I don't know why they didn't just call her Zephyr or Zeph. But we find her and she is not in the Pegasus city, she is in the outskirts. And when the guards show up, she tells Izzy and Sunny, "Oh, you never saw me," and she runs off. I get the impression that she was kind of doing something to get away from the royal family where they can't see her and to be out of public sight to do something, but we never find out why she's here. We never find out why she was sneaking out of the palace. We see her later where she shows her secret place with like Twilight Sparkle's balloon and the wind turbine that she uses to float because the Pegasi can't fly because they don't have magic at this point. I don't know, does she need to walk this mountain path? No, she doesn't, because I think that's below the castle. Why is she here? This is never explained. Oh, she's here because she needs to run into Izzy and Sunny so that later on in the plot they can meet up with her again. So she is here. That is why she's at this point. This is why they run into her, because the plot needs them to. We have a pan over the Pegasus city, and I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. There's also a part here where Sunny and Izzy, they stand up against the glass and they put their hooves against it to look out over the Pegasus city, and they have hearts at the bottom of their hooves. I think this is really cute. In the past, My Little Pony have always had a thing about the bottom of the toys' hooves in G3. I think it was G3. Was it G3 or G4? One of them, they have a rainbow with the clouds in the shape of a horseshoe at the bottom of the hoofs. And that's kind of like the branding to mark that they are not bootlegs. These are official toys. And having hearts, I think that's really cute. I really like that. That's a part of the character design I think is very good. So whoever came up with this idea, if it was Imalu or if it was the toy department, this is a very good touch. I like this quite a bit. On the opposite end of the character design, I hate Pip's wings. How do they work? I hate them. They look like ostrich wings. And maybe that would mean something because at this point the Pegasi can't fly, but it doesn't. I don't like them. I do not like the way these wings are drawn. I do not like the way it looks in 3D. I do not like the way it looks in 2D. It's not good. I also, of the character designs, I think Zip has one of the better designs in terms of color coordination. The other ponies, especially with the hair, they don't have strong color blocking of this color, this color, this color. It all kind of like blends together. And again, this works in 3D. I don't know how they're going to tackle this in 2D. And I've seen what the toys look like and just no. But Zip at least has very strong color blocking. And she has it in her wings as well. My concern is how are you going to communicate this in the toy? Because Hasbro has gotten extremely cheap with its toy production, especially in My Little Pony. They're using a very low-grade nylon for the hair lately, and they're using less and less paint. You can see on all the Hasbro released retro-style ponies, they don't sculpt the eyes, so the eye stamps are always out of place. If you compare it to like the Basic Fun releases of the retro ponies, the Basic Fun retro ponies are, I think they're using direct molds from the 80s ponies, so it's got very lovely eye shaping, like you see on Monster High and Barbie. Like if you remove the eye paint, you still have the shape of where the eye is. The retro style ponies that Hasbro is doing, they don't have that. They just kind of stamp the eyes on as a sticker without any indication of where they should be, so they're always off center. So I don't know how Hasbro is going to handle having Pegasi ponies who have very specific wing coloration on their wings. I don't know how they plan to tackle this and keep this consistent. It's a very good design aesthetic, but it also seems like, this is going to cause problems. Also, Toby Fox is here. I don't know why, but I'm glad he's doing well for himself. He looks happy. I also wrote down, you can tell the songs were written first. So I don't know how aware people are. Red Letter Media mentioned this, but with the new Marvel movies, they do the action scenes first, and then they write the script around those and just kind of insert them where they need to be. This is what the songs feel like in this movie as well, and I'm not saying this as an insult. I'm saying this as a statement of fact, that this is what I sincerely believe is what happened. Is they wrote the songs and the script in the movie was written around where to put those songs in, because it's not that they are jarringly out of place or anything. It's just, it is so puzzle pieced together. I know I know the expression is paint by number, but I think puzzle piece works better because you have all these individual pieces of what your movie needs to be, and you have to slot them in place. Like, this is where this happens, this is where this happens. Again, like I was saying, none of the characters having personal motivation for why they're doing things. And that's like, you are going here because this is what the plot needs. And this is also like, you are singing because this is where a song needs to happen. And this happens every single time they break into song. It's very much, okay, we need to start singing because we have written this song, and now this is the part where the song needs to happen. Speaking of songs, we then cut back to Baltimore, where they start singing this. I had to pause the movie and listen to Smells Like Nirvana before I could continue past this. We then get to the part where Zip is explaining to Izzy and Sunny that she really wants to fly. Like, she comes to the hot air balloon place to use the turbine to give herself an updraft so that she can just hover against the air. And this is the one and only part we have any kind of look into these characters' inner thoughts and feelings about things. This is the only part in the entire movie outside of Sunny where we get to understand or the inner drive of any of our characters. We don't know anything about Zip, but we do know that Zip wants to fly. We do know that Zip really, this is something that speaks to her beyond just using it as a sort of status symbol about why she is better than everyone else. Flying in of itself is what she wants to do. And this is the only time in the movie we get any kind of insight into any of the characters along this point. And as such, it makes Zip one of the more endearing characters. Oh jeez, I forgot to mention this, and it's probably because my brain is trying to protect me by suppressing that memory. But Zip's sister Pip, the other princess, she's an influencer. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. Hitch shows up again, and I wrote down, what is Hitch doing here? And I don't know why I bothered writing that, because I already explained it. He's here because the plot needs him to be. We find out, or the rest of the population of the Pegasus City find out, that the royal family has been faking being able to fly. So they arrest the queen because she lied about this? I don't understand this plot point at all. They have the joke where, and again, this is where the self-aware humor kind of way of writing also shoots the plot itself in the foot, because the joke is, oh, we arrested the queen because she's a phony baloney pony, which is a funny line, but it doesn't make any kind of sense. It doesn't make sense within the internal logic of the movie. Why would you arrest the queen because she lied about flying? Was she made the queen just because she can fly? Because unless that's the case, there is no reason for this to happen. That's like arresting Queen Elizabeth II, because in my 1953 film annual, there's an article written where they talk about how even the new queen likes going to the cinema to watch movies. It's like they wrote that article and then you find out in the year 2021 that Queen Elizabeth doesn't actually like watching movies, and then you arrest her for it because she lied about what I thought was happening was the royal family can fly and all the other Pegasi can fly. They just don't know they can because the royal family has been lying to them about it purposefully to keep them oppressed, or they are forced not to fly by like brute force. You are not allowed to fly. That is what I thought was going on, but no, that's not the case at all. It's just that the royal family have been pretending that they can fly when they actually can't. So they arrest the queen. This is a baffling plot point to me. It makes absolutely no sense. The queen got arrested because the story needs Pip to follow the other main characters so she can be part of the main friend group. And this is the part where I wrote down about the story being written backwards, because at this point, when Pip is exposed at her giant concert, like where she's trying to be Powerline and she's doing the song sequence, it was supposed to be her big moment, and she's exposed as a fake because she can't fly, and she makes direct eye contact with Zip to help her, and Zip just turns and runs away with the other characters, and then the queen gets arrested. So Pip follows after them, And she directly says to Zip, "You left me hanging, and the Queen has been arrested. I've been exposed. Everybody hates me." These are real concerns. These are personal motivations for why Pip is angry. And Zip's response is, "We are going on a quest to find these crystals to bring magic back to the land so that all the Pegasi can fly." And then Pip goes, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And she becomes their friend. And the reason for this is because the plot needs Pip to be part of the friend group. Pip's personal motivations for being upset that Zip left her hanging and betrayed her and literally ran out on her to go on a grand quest instead of helping her sister is completely thrown out the window because the plot can't have Pip be angry at her sister at this point. The plot needs Pip to be part of the friend group. So Pip becomes part of the friend group. It's this movie was written backwards in that they had specific plot points that had to be hit, and the characters have no personal motivations for why anything happens, and so everything just falls in line with what the plot needs to happen because these are the set pieces within the story that we need to hit, because this is the mandate that the toy side of Hasbro has given us in order to sell specific toys and playsets and to introduce specific characters and have them all be a friend group by the end of the movie, so that when we start the TV show, we have a cast of characters already built up to work with. At this point, Hitch has been chasing after them to arrest Sunny for being friends with the unicorn, so the character of Sprout has been made the sheriff of Baltimore. And I wrote down, because at this point they do a pop culture reference to Star Wars, because this is the only way these writers know how to write jokes, is to reference other things that exist, not make a joke about them, although Judgment Nay is pretty good, but just to point out that these are things that exist. So Sprout goes mad with power, and I wrote down, who is in charge of Baltimore? They don't have a mayor, they don't have a king, they don't have anyone in charge. And even when we find out that the Earth Pony crystal was owned by Sunny's dad, there's no explanation given for that, because her dad wasn't in charge of the town. He was just some nobody who collected brony merchandise. So I don't understand. I think every single time I say I don't understand why this is happening, you can just revert back to my argument of this is happening because the plot needs it to happen for the next set of events to happen. So Baltimore doesn't have anybody in charge because they need Sprout to go mad with power and take over. That is why nobody is in charge of Baltimore. Okay, moving on. This point when they get to the unicorn place, or just before it when they're talking around the campfire, this is when Izzy finally explains why she went to Baltimore. And it's not Sunny who asks her, it's Hitch who asks her, "Oh, by the way, why did you come to Baltimore?" That's the other thing. At this point, Izzy explains, "Oh, this is why I went to Baltimore, because I found this thing when I was a child and I always wanted to go to Baltimore." We don't find, it never gets answers why she waited so long, why she had to wait until she was an adult to come to Baltimore, or anything like that. None of that is explained. And at no point in the movie between any of the characters do we have any part of the story where, in other movies and stories where you have characters sit down at a quiet moment in the story, like sitting around the campfire, and they kind of talk to each other and they kind of get an insight into who the other person is, and they get to know each other and they learn a bit more about each other on a personal human level, rather than just, I am princess of Pegasus City, I am the police chief, I am the weird unicorn arts and crafts pony. You actually get a feeling for who the other person is. At no point in this story do these characters get to know each other. And at this point around the campfire, this feels like this should be one of those moments, but rather than have the characters get to know each other, we have to explain why Izzy was in Baltimore, which is a question which should have been raised the second Sunny got Izzy inside her house. She should have asked her, she has that question of questions to ask a unicorn. The very first one should be, why did you come here? But why do I keep asking questions? The answer is they needed the plot to happen, so this is why this happens at this point in the story. The plot did not need the characters to get to know each other, and so it doesn't happen. At this point, Pip says this,
Ta-da! I so wish I had live streamed that.
and I wrote down in my notes, I'm going to die. As an extension of my whole thing of the characters never getting to know each other on a personal level, I also wrote down that none of the characters have a personality outside of Izzy, and Izzy's personality is basically Pinkie Pie but stupid. But none of the other characters have personalities. And I'm sorry, but influencer is not a personality. Influencer is as much a personality type as cowgirl is. And with the hindsight of what Gen 4 was like, do you start to see why influencer as a personality trait might spell problems in future for Pip as a character? Like, Zip, okay, we know that Zip's motivation is she really wants flying, she really wants to fly, it's something she has genuine passion for. That's all well and good, but it doesn't tell us anything about her personality. It tells us about her motivations, it tells us what her inner drive is, but it doesn't tell us what she's like as a character. She kind of jokes around with Hitch, she calls him sheriff and all that, but that's only a window into what her personality might be. It's enough for people on the internet to speculate about what her personality might be like, but it's no actual writing of a personality within the film itself. And all the characters have this problem. Even Sunny has this problem. Sunny does not have a personality beyond nice girl. She calls herself kind of weird, but it's not that she's kind of weird in that she does weird things because she thinks ponies should be friends. And that's not really indicative of what kind of person she is. It's only indicative of the kind of things she would do physically. And how do I explain this? Like, if you compare to Izzy, even if we don't know why Izzy showed up in Baltimore, we know what kind of person Izzy is. She's not very bright, she's really goofy, she's the manic pixie dream girl in unicorn form, she's the quirky one. That is all what her personality is. It has nothing to do with her motivations or inner drive, but it is who she is as a personality. Sunny does not have this. Sunny has personal motivations and drive as to why she's doing certain things, which a lot of the other characters do not have. Like, Izzy does not have a personal motivation other than I have friends in Baltimore and I want to meet them. And the tragic thing about Izzy is you have the building blocks there for her personality, because it turns out she's very different from the other unicorns who are all kind of just depressed and superstitious, whereas Izzy is completely not like that because she's really quirky and upbeat. There's the building blocks there for a story of I am the weird one in my town. I got a letter saying I have friends in Baltimore, so I always wanted to go there because I don't have friends where I come from. But that is never outright stated in the movie. What is stated in the movie is I am not like the other unicorns, and I received this letter that I have friends in Baltimore and I wanted to meet them. And then I guess they left it up to the audience to come to that conclusion on their own. However, it's not written in a way where it's subtle enough for us to pick up on it. It's just that it's left blank so that we have to fill in those blank spaces ourselves. Like, we have to write the character. And the audience should not be the one who writes the character. The movie should be the one that presents you enough for you to understand the character. That's not something that should be your responsibility when you're watching a movie or TV show. But as I said, Sunny does not have a personality. If you take away the fact that she thinks all ponies should be friends, and you take away the fact that she constantly commits criminal acts to try and spread this dogma, she does not have a personality beyond this. I don't know who Sunny is if you take away that mindset. If you take that away, she has no personality beyond main character. She is completely interchangeable with any other nice girl main character in any other piece of girls media. I could not tell you what makes Sunny different from Bloom from Winx Club, except for the fact that at least Bloom has the characteristic of having a bit of a short temper. The other thing about nobody having any personal motivations or drives as to why they make decisions unique unto themselves, other than the plot requires them to do this at this point in the story, means there is absolutely no personal stakes in the story whatsoever. Nobody has any personal investment in anything that happens. The only person who does is Sunny herself, because she feels all ponies should be friends. And when she brings the crystals together and it doesn't work at first, and we hit where she's at her low point in the movie, it's because her entire life has been a lie. Like, her entire view on the world is completely shattered at this point. And like I said, she has no personality beyond this dogma that she pushes forward. So if you take that away, who is she as a character? That in of itself could have been an interesting angle to write her from, where if you take away this idea that all the ponies should be friends, then who is she? But apart from her, none of the other characters have any personal investment in this whatsoever. Zip might, because the crystals not working means that she doesn't get the ability to fly, but we never see her be disappointed by the fact that the crystals don't work. We don't see her react to this possibility of what could have made her life more fulfilling, her investment into this quest. We never get to see her be disappointed by it not working, other than the generic everybody is sad. And as for Pip, her personal motivation is she wants everybody to like her again, but as we know in the real world, all she really needs to do is put up an apology video, talk about her mental health and ask for forgiveness, and then she can go right back to live streaming like nobody's gonna care. Give it a month. And again, Pip is weird because Pip at this point in the story, she should be very angry at her sister for abandoning her, and she should be very angry at Sunny, Izzy and Hitch for essentially destroying her life. But she never shows any of those emotions, so when the crystals don't work and it's not a solution to her problem that everybody knows she's a fake, we don't really see her reaction to that. And even if we did, I don't know how I would react to that emotion, because we have already seen that her emotions of anger earlier don't really have any impact on the story whatsoever. So why should her disappointment have any impact on the story? So even if she did show disappointment, I would not be able to relate to it, because the movie has told me that her emotions are not important enough. What is important is the main plot. And Hitch has no reason to be here. Hitch has no personal reason to be here whatsoever. I've already said that his motivations make no sense. But if the crystals don't work, it means nothing to him. He doesn't lose anything. If the crystals worked, he doesn't gain anything. He has zero personal investment in all of this. And Izzy's only real motivations was to see the friends that she supposedly has in Baltimore. Okay, she's met Sunny, so right at the start of the movie, her motivations have been fulfilled. So the fact that the magic doesn't come back to Equestria doesn't mean anything to her either. She has no personal investment in whether this works or not. She was kind of just hanging around Sunny because she wants to be Sunny's friend. That's the start and end of her investment here. So nobody has any personal stakes into anything that happens in the larger plot. None of them have anything to lose. They might have something to gain, especially in characters like Zip and Pip, but if it doesn't work out, nothing happens. So it makes us feel, so what's the point? Other than Sunny being sad, which is a bummer because we're supposed to like her, that's one thing, but you feel so removed from everything that happens. You don't feel any emotional connection to why we should feel sad, why we should want this quest to be completed, other than we want a TV show to exist after this. We want a world to be built up so that we can have our characters work within it. There's nothing for us to feel. I don't feel anything watching this movie. And then when we get to the end of the movie, this is further pointed out by the fact that the main bad guy, who is Sprout, who just goes mad with power, when the movie doesn't want him to be the bad guy anymore because Sunny's house gets destroyed and she brings back magic to Equestria, you don't want Sprout to be the bad guy anymore because that conflict is not the resolution of the story. The resolution of the story is bringing back magic to Equestria. The resolution of the story is not stopping Sprout. So when Sprout goes mad with power and destroys Sunny's house, but then magic gets returned to Equestria, Sprout just stops being the bad guy. He stops being the bad guy. He just goes, "Oh, I did a good job, right?" And his mom kind of just nervously laughs, and it's played off as a joke, but there is no climax to that storyline. There's no resolution to it. He just kind of stops because the plot needs him to. The plot needs him to stop being bad now, so he does. So again, no resolution there, and as a result, the bad guy doesn't learn anything. The bad guy, Sprout, does not go through any character arc whatsoever. Sprout doesn't evolve in any kind of way. Sprout gets put into the position of sheriff for no reason. At the beginning of the movie, he says that he wants to be sheriff, and then when they're adults, you find out he's not the sheriff. But he does not display any drive to become the sheriff when he's an adult. His mother has to put the idea into his head that he can be the sheriff. And it's only after he becomes sheriff that he becomes mad with power. And when he destroys Sonny's house, he doesn't feel guilty about it. He doesn't feel bad about it, and that makes him rethink his actions. He just stops being bad, and once he stops being bad, he asks his mother if he did a good job as the sheriff, and she doesn't correct him. So nobody learns anything. Nobody goes through any changes. So, as I said, this is an entire movie that was written backwards, if you ask me. It had specific plot beats that it had to hit, and at no point in time were the characters or their personalities or their personal motivations or their stakes in the matter or their connection to the main quest ever considered. None of the characters have at any point in the movie a place where they can express who they are, what kind of person they are. None of them have a personal connection to the main plot. None of them have any stakes or investment at the end. The bad guy has no motivation for why he becomes bad. He has nothing to lose at the end, and the good guys have nothing to lose if the bad guy wins. And it's a giant movie of nothing. It's a giant movie of nothing. And I know there might be some people who are asking, well, it's a kids show made for ages 4 to 7. Why are you complaining? It just goes through the hoops of what a basic storyline is. Isn't that enough for children? Children are not going to care about things like personal character motivation. And the fact of the matter is that in children's media, you cannot get away with doing a slipshod job just because you think the audience is too stupid to notice your shortcomings. And it may be true that a lot of kids will be perfectly fine with this, and that's just a fact. It's a fact that children do not have the ability to be critical in things that are wrong in media. This is why often you have a movie that you really love as a child, and when you rewatch it as an adult, you realize it's a hot piece of trash. I mean, I grew up with the movie Howard Duck. I absolutely loved that movie as a child, and I know that movie is a hot piece of trash, but I cannot view it objectively because I like that movie because I liked it as a child. And it's because as a child, I was not able to see it as terrible because I did not have those abilities of critical thinking as a child. So it may be true that no child is going to complain about the lack of character motivations in terms of personal stakes. However, I also feel it doesn't give the right for writers who work within the industry to do a poor job just because their mistakes will go unnoticed by the target audience, because that merely breeds laziness and a treatment of the audience as stupid. And even if you're writing for children, you can write to children in a way where what you're writing is simplistic so that they can understand it, but you should not write to children as if they are stupid, because there's a very big difference between simplifying things so that a child can understand them and just not doing your job properly because a kid won't notice anyway. And I feel this movie, it's not that it's offensive or anything like that, but I do not think this movie was written by somebody who possesses very high skills in writing. And if it is a movie that was written by somebody who has high skills in writing, then it's even worse, because in that case it implies that this person did not try. They did the bottom barrel amount of work that needs to be done for there to be a plot. So it's either somebody who is not a good writer, or it's somebody who is inexperienced, or it's somebody who didn't bother putting in the amount of work, or it's somebody who is not a writer. It might be a storyboarder who did not do a who does not have any qualifications in any creative writing whatsoever, because that's a trend that you're seeing a lot in cartoons these days, where instead of hiring actual writers, they will just make the creator of the show itself, like the head director or storyboarder, be the person who has to do double duty as writer as well. And many times people who have a degree in storyboarding have no degrees or experience in creative writing. They have no education in that whatsoever outside of high school English. And this is very often where you see very low quality writing in cartoons, even though the cartoon itself might be very high concept. And I'm not sure if that's what happened here. And I don't want to insult the writers, but I do feel that this movie is not a strong foundation moving forward. And aside from putting characters on screen and naming them, it's going to be up to the TV show to pull the weight that the movie did not bother giving. They have to kind of take bare building blocks and cobble together a story of their own, because outside of establishing characters, this movie gave very little, if anything at all. The one moment of joy and entertainment I got out of the film is this commercial though. This is the one part in the entire movie where I felt joy. And it's genuinely a good funny joke. So whoever did this part of the film, whoever wrote this, good job, because it's unironically the best part of the film. If you watched this whole thing, thank you for watching the whole video so far. Sorry it's so long, I have a tendency to ramble when I'm off script. I'm trying to rein that in a little bit and cut things down so that they don't go on forever. I have a video coming up about cartoons from the 1950s and why they are the way they are and why they are viewed as being weird and creepy. However, it requires a lot of fact checking because I don't want to make statements that are only half true because I didn't double check them. So it's going to be a little while before that's finished. I'm still writing the script. Also, my channel got a copyright strike from Sony Japan because I showed 20 seconds of footage in an hour-long video. So that video has not been uploaded yet because I'm too afraid, even though I've edited out the part that got me struck completely. I don't want to put my channel in jeopardy, so that video is going to be put on hold until the strike expires. Also, I have a Patreon in the links below. You can support me there. If you pledge $1 a month, you get to see a video a week early and you get to see some of my art early, as well as like coloring pages and stuff like that. And I have a coffee if you just want to throw me a tip and just kind of be like, hey, good job. Because at this point I haven't gotten any monetization from YouTube yet, just because I'm too small. So I'm basically doing these videos in my free time, which isn't a lot. And is there anything else I need to say? I'm still learning how to do this thing. My voice is going because I talked about pastel colored horses for over an hour. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, YouTube stuff. And I still don't know how to end videos, so credits.